And so let's go to our next speaker, which is Mark E. Jones. He's a Beam Alliance board member, and he's also the head of preclinical development and head of development project management of Basilea Pharmaceutica as well. Mark, you there? I can see you on screen. Excellent. Mark, I'm going to give you 5 minutes, and then we're going to do some questions with the audience as well,
Absolutely,
just to keep it on track.
So thank you, Brian. I think you hear me loud and clear. And thank you, Wolfgang and Chris, for your insightful overviews of HERA, the EU BARDA, as you've referred to it there, and of course the mature organization of BARDA presented by Chris. And we thought what would be a good way to segue for some discussion and questions, particularly around the potential, the exciting potential of HERA, is just to take a look at the experience from a BARDA contractor. So in that sense, I'm Mark, as Chris has, as Brian has says, from Basilea, and we're a BARDA contractor, but I think it's not so much about Basilea, rather it's about we're a small, medium enterprise, typical of any of the 69 Beam Alliance members. And it's a statement, it's not a, it's a fact that accessing funding to offset the prohibitive development costs, in here I'm talking about phase 1 through the pivotal phase 3 studies, is probably the single biggest and most challenging hurdle to get a drug approved. And in the end, what we're talking about is getting a drug approved. That's the end goal that we should all stay focused on. Now, Arjan van Hengel has referred to this in the earlier presentation, I think very nicely, as this valley of death. And that's the point where the hurdle is insurmountable unless we can access external funding. We can talk from an experience here because there is, of course, experience in so-called push incentives. No one right now can talk from their experience of a pull incentive, really significant pull incentives, because as we've heard from previous speakers, they're not yet there. So if I go on to the next slide. So the fact is that external funding allows a company like Basilea to invest in antibiotic research and development. And without it, resources would be plowed into other therapeutic areas. That's the issue we're all focused on. Basilea, typical, we have two portfolios, an oncology and an antibiotic R&D. What is the incentive to invest in the antibiotic portfolio when we can simply have a better return on investment by far in the oncology portfolio? This is what we're trying to change to re-incentivize this. So I think the discussions there, the presentation from Chris from BARDA, are particularly insightful. Basilea, BARDA, as you heard from Chris, has funded 28 different antibiotic candidates, 3 approvals, Babamir, Zemdri, Xerava. That's 3 approved new novel antibiotics on the marketplace. That's the goal. And it's always interesting when I hear the numbers, 1.5 billion US dollars. Actually, this is peanuts. And it always amazes me of the challenges to find such a relatively small amount of money to solve such a fundamentally important issue to effectively human society. And the $1.5 billion, coincidentally, we've also seen on several other slides, that's the cost just in Europe per year estimated of antimicrobial resistance, not to mention the costs globally. Basilea is funded by BARDA with the phase 3 program for Ceftobiprole, and we saw that fitting one of those unmet medical needs on the slide that Arjan presented in terms of MRSA, in this case for Staph aureus bacteremia. But what is it about the BARDA funding that we are fortunate enough to access that has really made a difference? Chris alluded to this before, and I've just very easily summarized this in 3 buckets: the people. So I'm repeating a little bit what Chris says. He described that as the sauce, the hot sauce, the sauce that makes it really tasty, makes it different. There's a group of people dedicated to antibiotics. That makes a difference. This is their job. And as Chris has alluded to, they are experts in toxicology, DMPK, pharmacology, clinical research, clinical operations, quality, CMC, API, drug product. They're true experts, but expertise does not get you very far unless you have experience. And from our experience, the BARDA staff that partner with us on sometimes, certainly a weekly, sometimes daily point of view, have 10 years or so in experience, former senior people, former FDA reviewers, 10 years experience in developing drugs. So they absolutely know what they're talking about. And I think the other thing worth pulling out is it's a common goal. The entire organization is focused on the approval. Nothing in between. It's getting to the approval. That's the goal. The second bucket I'd focus on now, and it should pull up the next bullet. Yes, there it is I've called it the product, which for the small medium enterprise, for the BEAM members, our 69 members who are bravely trying to develop antibacterials, it's non-dilutive funding. And you really cannot get much better than that. But the non-dilutive funding is also milestone driven. And that's really important. Phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. It's always pushing for the next step. We have to achieve the next step to get the next tranche of funding. And that's done in a cost share basis. And a cost share, remember, if the small medium enterprise, the small pharma company who we know are really driving the innovation today, not big pharma, 10% of a 50 million phase 3 study is an enormous amount of money for a loss-making biotech or a small pharma. So that shared risk drives us all in the same direction to most efficiently develop the drug. And the third bucket I'll pull out is the process, as I've called it. The contractual relationship, it's a two-party contract. There is no consortium. There are no other external stakeholders to complicate that. The pharma contractor that owns that asset, that knows best how to develop the drug, has that responsibility and control within the bounds of a detailed statement of work, which is in the contract. Every spend requires BARDA approval. It's a hurdle, but it works out to be the best way to develop a drug. We have to be responsible for spending effectively public money, and we have to demonstrate value to the US government. Multiple bids, teasing out the best contractor, may not be the cheapest, but the best. And then that oversight. Altogether, the expertise from BARDA, the expertise that companies have, provide strong cross-functional expert team. And I repeat, laser focused on that ultimate goal to get a drug approved. For the case of BARDA contracting, clearly the focus is the FDA, but those data sets can be applied to other health authority jurisdictions. So in summary, on that last bullet, I think what we have here for HERA, and the BEAM Alliance has really appreciated being part of that consultancy process, not just for the pharmaceutical trust strategy, but now for HERA. It's really critically important. It's an unprecedented opportunity for us to revitalize this sector, supporting directly the biotechs, the pharmas who are really driving the innovation. And I end up on that goal to get the clinical development phases completed to approval. And I'll end there, and I think a nice segue to allow questions and discussions back to Brian for this incredibly important opportunity that allows to take a little bit of weight off of BARDA's shoulders, I may say, who have taken the lion's share of funding for more than 10 years now. It's really time for Europe to play its role. And I think we hear the positive noises. We need now to set that into concrete, effective action. Thank you, Brian.